I'm Olek Novak, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the 2024 Mitsubishi Pajero Sport. We've got it here with us today in top spec GSR trim. Now, the Pajero Sport, it has been out for almost 10 years now, so on one hand, as an automotive journalist, it would be easy to complain about this car being a bit outdated, a bit old school, but I wonder if that's actually potentially one of this vehicle's key selling points in 2024. Now, it's still soldering on in Australia. It's been updated in 2024. There's been some tweaks to the lineup, to the pricing, to the styling as well. And ultimately it is still selling pretty well. And the customer is the ultimate judge of that. So today we want to find out how well it is aging in 2024. Should it still be on your consideration list? But we're going to be doing that a bit differently. We're going to be doing this review entirely off-road, arguably in one of this car's most natural environments to see just what it's like off the beaten track. So before we do all of that, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
So what's changed for the Pajero Sport for 2024? Well, the updates are pretty subtle. So if you have an older Pajero Sport, that's good because it won't look too outdated. But for the train sporters out there, so there's been some revisions to the headlights, subtle, some grille revisions as well, and you've got some new designs for the 18-inch alloy wheels too. What hasn't changed is what's under the bonnet, the 2.4 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder that's been with the vehicle for a number of years, tried and tested. That is still there, and the bulk of the vehicle is still essentially the same. There's been a few more revisions, a few minor ones, and some inside that we'll check out very shortly as well. In terms of the lineup, that's been tweaked too. It's been reduced slightly, so the two-wheel drive vehicles from the lineup have been eliminated, and it's now entirely four-wheel drive vehicles. So the range opens with the entry grade GLX, that is 5 seats only. Then the rest of them are all 7 seats, so you can step up to the GLS with the deluxe pack, and then of course the Exceed and the GSR we've got here today. The range opens at around just over 50 grand before on-road costs, and this vehicle we've got with us here today, the GSR, is around 68 grand before on-road costs. Now, the Pajero Sport, given it is older, it is slightly outdated, not necessarily in a negative sense, and it does operate and pitch itself as that more kind of value-focused vehicle. So I reckon, in my opinion, I'd probably be looking a bit further down in the range to just save on those costs, because ultimately the GSR does have a few niceties, but a lot of it is just spending a bit of extra money for the black styling features, which don't ultimately add that much. But let us know in the comments section down below which grade you reckon is the best. In the meantime, let's check out the interior. All right, so the interior of the Pajero Sport. Look, yes, it is in many ways a generation ago, outdated, but again, I do wonder if part of the appeal of this vehicle is exactly that, because you get in it, everything is where you expect, it kind of all just works, and it's all very tactile and tangible. It's a bit chunky and hefty, and I think for a vehicle that pitches itself as a bit more value focused and rugged, I think it is quite good. And I think as part of this kind of off-road experience we've been doing today, it has been quite refreshing to be in a vehicle that you feel like you can kind of beat around a bit. So that comes with pluses and minuses. Before we go through just a few of those, what are some of the things that have changed for the 2024 update from a few months ago? Well, I guess you've got a new kind of digital instrument cluster, which seems to do a pretty good job. It's not the best that I've seen, but it does the job. The 3-spoke steering wheel is new. That's quite nice. One cool thing I like is the paddle shifters are column mounted, which is cool, and they kind of remind me of what you'd find in like an Alfa Romeo Giulia or an Alfa Romeo Stelvio. So that was a bit unexpected because it's actually my first time driving a Pajero Sport. So I kind of like that about the vehicle. Otherwise, you've got an old school shifter, which feels quite good. You've got some tangible controls over here. You do have an electric park brake. In terms of some downsides, maybe, so I guess the fact that you've got wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and you've got USB-A connection, so not USB-C. Also, the infotainment screen, it's a bit outdated. I found it maybe a bit slow as well. So look, it's not the most modern, but at the same time, you've got tangible buttons for things like the aircon. So I think a lot of people are going to appreciate what this vehicle offers. Now, in terms of the GSR, so that interestingly, that comes with synthetic leather on the seats, but the lower spec models have actual leather. So I realized that is actually to do with the fact that apparently the synthetic leather doesn't absorb heat as much. So I guess if you are in environments like this, where in South Australia currently, where it is quite hot, so maybe that is actually a good point about the GSR, is that you do have the synthetic leather that doesn't absorb heat as much. So that's one thing to note, but let's check out the rear seats. Rear seat space is pretty good in the Pajero Sport. So the seats, I reckon they're quite comfy. Maybe I feel like you are sitting a bit high, and maybe the under thigh support isn't too great, but at the same time, seats are comfy. Legroom, quite good for me at 6 foot. Toe room, oh look, not amazing, but yeah, leg room, knee room is good. Headroom, so you can recline the seats slightly. For me, it's just okay. I think it's a bit windy, so my hair's all over the place, so I can feel it touching the top, so that's just one thing to note, but should be okay. Visibility for rear seat passengers, it's all right. I guess this seat's kind of blocking it a bit, but otherwise it's not too bad. Materials are a bit hard, but I think that's the case for this type of vehicle. It still feels pretty good. You've got a little center armrest over here that does have some cup holders, so that is good. And then you've got map pockets either side, front passenger and front driver's seat over here, which is good as well. Then you've got 2 USB-A connections, so no USB-C in the back, a bit of a transmission tunnel over here, but you do have a 3-pin plug over here as well, so you can plug stuff in, which is great, especially if you are going off-road quite a bit. So that is the rear seat, but of course, let's check out the third row. Third row, the pluses, it was quite easy to get the seats ready for the third row and fold them up, but the downsides, look, this is really for kids. So look, the seat's not too bad, but as you can see, my legs are right up in the air and my headroom isn't that great. So yes, really just for kids. So when you do go off the beaten track in the Pajero Sport, how much boot space are you going to have? Well, let's open the electric power tailgate we've got on the GSR. First thing to note for me, it's 6 foot. Just be careful of your head, because that could, I can imagine myself definitely hitting myself if I'm not careful a few times. But currently, so we've got the second row up, but the third row down. So we've got just over 500 litres of boot space. If we were to have the third row up, then there's just around 140 litres of boot space. And of course, if you had all the second and the third row down, then you'd have just over around 1,480 litres of boot space. It's pretty good currently with the second row up but the third row down. Maybe a bit of a high lip over here to load things, but you've got a little compartmentalised storage section here as well. But that is the boot of the Pajero Sport. So let's close that and see what it's like off-road. All right, so what's the Pajero Sport like off-road? So we've been doing a lot of different kinds of driving. We've done some rock driving, gravel driving, we've tackled some steep descents and ascents, and today is all about sand driving. So it might get a bit bouncy and a bit slippery as part of this piece to camera, but overall my impressions have been pretty positive. So I guess the first thing I noticed when I got into the Pajero Sport is just how heavy the steering is. Now, that's not necessarily a criticism. It might be a criticism for some people, but I guess it's got a hydraulic steering system with electric assistance. So downsides, yes, it's heavier, but on the other hand, it's a bit more feelsome, I reckon. And I do actually, personally, I find that quite refreshing and I enjoy that. That is the first thing to notice about the Pajero Sport. Other than that, overall, it's tackled everything that we've kind of thrown at it as part of this kind of 2-day experience pretty well. The Powertrain, the 2.4 litre, I guess there's been some criticism about the fact that it is a bit underpowered, and I guess maybe on the highway driving here, there was some moments where I'm like, oh yeah, this could use more power, but really for off-road driving, I think it's plenty for, at least for my level of ability and what we've been tackling today. So I don't have a criticism in that regard. It's been quite easy to modulate and has a decent amount of torque as well to navigate everything that we have been doing. So that's the Powertrain. One thing I also appreciate, the 8-speed automatic has done a pretty good job as part of our drive experience. I mentioned the paddles earlier and I really do like them. They're quite easy to use. I like the fact that they're mounted to the column, and yeah, it's just quite easy when you do want to control the gears and shift yourself. So that is a good aspect about the Pajero Sport. Apart from that, another good element is because it's a narrower vehicle, that actually is quite a good thing, because it means that if you are tackling some tricky environments that you really need to snake your way through, that does make it a bit easier to navigate in that regard. Also minimizes the chance of scratching as well, which is quite a good thing. And I guess one of the key selling points with the Pajero Sport is just it's got Mitsubishi's Super Select 2 4-wheel drive system, and the fact that it's got full-time 4-wheel drive is a pretty cool thing, and it's really quite easy to use. So it's got the dial over here which is quite easily accessible, and it's very easy to switch between 2-wheel drive high range, 4-wheel drive high range, 4-wheel drive high range with the center diff locked, and also 4-wheel drive low range with the diff locked as well. Now I find the traction control system on this vehicle worked really well, so often really that was good enough for everything we were doing and everything that we were tackling as part of our experience with the Pajero Sport. And you've also got a lot of drive modes that you can switch between. So you can press this button over here to switch between mud, snow, sand, gravel modes as well, which is excellent. And they do a really good job depending on what environment that you are in. Now, we've also done a few other activities apart from sand driving as part of this drive experience. So we've done some hill descents as well. So that was a good opportunity to test out the hill descent control. So yeah, the hill descent control did a really good job. And one thing that I did enjoy about that system is that I found it quite intuitive to use, because essentially you use the accelerator and brake pedal to modulate this speed of the vehicle that you want the hill descent control to work. So I found that just by using the pedals, it was quite intuitive and it did a really good job. Apart from that, other elements of the vehicle, so in terms of safety systems, I didn't find them to be too overly intrusive by any means as part of this trip, so that is a good thing, and probably something that a lot of buyers may appreciate about the fact that this vehicle is a bit older as well. But overall, really, it just felt quite competent, rugged, and relatively confidence-inspiring off-road in terms of just being able to handle whatever we threw at it. And in terms of my four-wheel drive ability, I thought it did a really good job. And I think there's something to be said for that as we navigate some pretty bumpy elements there. That, yeah, this vehicle is old school, it's dated in many ways, but there's that benefit of buying vehicles potentially towards the end of their product life cycle when a lot of the gremlins have been dealt with. It is what it is. It knows what it is. It's pretty good at whatever you throw at it. Yeah, it's not the most refined vehicle, but it does its job around town as well for what most people will really need. And you've got its ability off-road with a good level of versatility and competence that it makes it still a decent case, I reckon, in 2025. Then in terms of servicing and running costs, so we've got the servicing costs displayed on screen now. In terms of warranty, you've got Mitsubishi's 10-year, 200,000 kilometer warranty. Obviously, there's a caveat on that, because to get to the 10 years and extend it from the 5 years, 100,000 kilometer warranty, you need to get it serviced at a Mitsubishi dealer. Then in terms of fuel consumption, we haven't done a proper fuel consumption test just in the time that we've had the vehicle. It seems that I've been averaging maybe between 8 and 12 litres, depending on the experience that we've been doing, but noting that that has been in a lot of different drive modes, tackling entirely, essentially, a lot of off-road activity as well. So those are my thoughts on the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport in 2024. Yeah, I reckon it is a bit old school, it is a bit outdated. Some people may not like that about it, especially in 2024 with the way things are going, with the competition, but I reckon for a certain type of buyer, that is exactly the appeal of this vehicle and probably why it is still selling pretty well. And I actually find it a bit charming in that sense. There's just a bit of honesty about it and what it does. Then you've got the backing of the 10-year warranty with caveats and elements like that, and the fact that you'd be purchasing a vehicle at the end of its product life cycle when really, theoretically, a lot of the gremlins have been eliminated. So it should definitely still be on your consideration list if you are looking for a dependable 7-seat SUV that also has decent off-road ability too. But let me know, do you reckon I've got it right? Do you reckon I've got it wrong about the Pajero Sport? Are there competitors that you'd be looking at instead? Let us know in the comments section down below. While you're there, make sure to hit like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, give us a follow on the socials too. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.